Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I rise in support of Lord's Amendment 16B, and just like the Minister, I'd like to declare an interest in that my little sister is a sheep farmer in Cornwall. I want to thank all farmers for their work again throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and the work that they will be undertaking during the second lockdown. We have been here before in this debate, and we may yet be here again. I welcome the government's adoption of large parts of Labour policy since the last time we spoke about the agriculture bill. But I have to say to the Minister, we're not quite there yet, but we're nearly there. The vote on food standards today is being followed by people in all our communities, and it's a decision about what type of country we want Britain to be. I want Britain to be a country of high standards that respects the welfare of animals and ensures that environmental protection is baked into our food chain. Because of that, we continue to press ministers to put our high food and farming standards into law. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to turn to the government's concessions and the amendment that stands in the Minister's name that puts those concessions into action. I'm glad that, having voted against attempts to strengthen the Trade and Agriculture Commission only a short time ago, that the government has changed their mind and the government's listened to farmers, the NFU and Labour in particular, on strengthening the Trade and Agriculture Commission. I want to thank ministers for their efforts, and in particular the Farming Minister for her personal efforts in trying to reach a compromise around this. And I'm grateful for all the work that she has done. In particular, I want to also thank Lord Grantchester and Baroness Jones in the other place, as well as the Lord's Minister cited by the Minister for what has taken place. It has been a team effort so far, and that includes the work of the National Farmers Union and Minette Batters in particular. The Minister knows that she was up against a hard deadline to pass this bill, and that is because of a decision taken by the government to oppose an extension to the powers in the direct payments to farmers bill that Labour proposed when we discussed this on the 21st of January. We suggested that ministers take an extra 12 months of power, so they weren't going to be up against a deadline, and I recall ministers saying that that would not be necessary. It turns out that a bit of forward planning is a good thing, and I would encourage ministers to look at those amendments when we bring them forwards next time, instead of arguing against them simply because of where they came from. But it is important that farmers are paid. Working side by side with our nation's farmers, we've helped secure two key concessions from ministers. Firstly, that the Trade and Agriculture Commission should be put on a statutory basis, renewable every 3 years, and this will happen in the form of amendment to the Trade Bill. That amendment has not yet been published, so we can't see the words, the meaning or the effect of that amendment will have yet. So can I ask the Minister, when will we see the Government's Trade Bill amendment to strengthen the Trade and Agriculture Commission to understand how it will work legally with the new clause contained in this bill? We know that the trade sector and the environment sector have not always agreed over food standards, and the truth is that I don't trust the Department for International Trade not to break any promises once this bill has been passed. So I think it is very clear that despite having one government, we sometimes have two competing food agendas. So can the Minister also confirm that the discussions around the wording of the amendment will take place with the opposition and will involve both DEFRA and DIT ministers to reach that conclusion? And can the Minister also give a commitment on the membership of the Trade and Agriculture Commission? Although broad at the moment, we feel that it could be strengthened by an enhanced consumer voice and with trade unions being part of it. I know that there is a proposal for trade unions to sit on a small union subcommittee, but having trade unions, a voice of the workers in our food sector as part of that main body, I think would be an important voice to have. The second concession that the Minister accepted was to enhance the scrutiny of trade deals, recognising that proposals that were forwarded previously were inadequate. And I think that is supported on all sides of the House, actually, in strengthening that. I think there's more that can be done here. I know this is an argument that the shadow trade, international trade secretary, my honourable friend for Islington South and I have been making consistently. But I do feel that we can go a wee bit further on this one. I welcome that the government will require a report to assess any trade deals against the standards of animal welfare, environmental protection and plant health. But this is extra scrutiny. It's not a vote on this matter. And that's what we agreed, and I think what should happen. The amendment that the Minister has tabled only proposes that this report will be laid before parliamentary committees and not to the House itself, and will not be subject to an automatic vote, but only a circuitous and fragile route. For a vote to happen, the House will know that the CRAG process requires that the government, in its generosity, would award the opposition an opposition day to challenge that trade deal if that trade deal falls below the standards we expect, regardless of what the TAC report may say. Now, the Minister mentioned in her remarks that the Trade Secretary says that she will find time for a debate, but having seen the government refuse the opposition days in the lead up to the last general election, you will forgive us for not believing that until we see it in writing. And I must say, should the parties swap places after the next general election, having that in writing would be useful for the Conservatives as well. The Minister says, I'll carry on going for just one moment if I can. The Minister says that a deal can be prayed against, but what we need here is a proper system of parliamentary scrutiny, not a reliance on the benevolence of any government minister to afford the opposition an opposition day. So to avoid any further ping-pong, I'd be grateful if the Minister could guarantee now, and furthermore say in a published ministerial statement, that the government will not unreasonably refuse an opposition day for this purpose, in particular when it comes to a vote on any food standards in any future trade deals. Next, I just want to press the Minister on the wording in the amendment, and we have spoken about this once. I hope she will be able to give some clarity on it. In the government amendment, under 2.1 of her amendment, the wording consistent with is used in relation to our own standards. I'd be grateful if the Minister could set out where that has the same legal meaning as equivalent to. Many of the Lords had a similar concern around that, and I'd be grateful if she could just set out the difference around what that means. I also think there's a logic of using production standards as one of the areas, and I know that the government can ask the Trade and Agriculture Commission to look at things beyond what's in primary legislation. So grateful if the Minister could look at whether production standards could also be used in relation to that. Will the plans for parliamentary scrutiny include deciding negotiating objectives, consultation, access to text during negotiations, and a statutory role for the relevant select committees as well as the TAC? The duty in the government's new clause to this bill is to report to Parliament on or to what extent commitments in new free trade agreements relating to agricultural products are consistent with maintaining UK standards. Can the Minister explain if that will allow deals to let in imports of those products, provided that it's merely reported to Parliament, or will that provision enable goods produced at lower standards to be stopped from entering the UK? Happy giving way briefly.
One of the important factors for us is the milk sector in Northern Ireland, especially in my constituency. It's very important that the high standards that we've had and our product that's sold across the world are maintained. Does he feel that within this legislation that those high standards that we have will be maintained by every other country in the world who will have the chance to bring their product into the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Grateful for the honourable member for intervening, and I think that was a point that the Minister should address in her remarks as well. I think we should be a beacon for high standards, and as the Minister herself moved an amendment to the Fisheries Bill on seal protection, precisely to enable our trade with the United States, who had higher legislative standards on seal protection, not other things perhaps, that we need to make sure that works on both sides of the Atlantic. So that is a good principle that I hope the Minister will adopt. I'm going to quickly run through this, mindful of the time that the Speaker set out. I do think that we do need to put our food and farming standards into law. It is something that there is a genuine, widespread concern of farmers in relation to, and I think it is something that is still missing from where the government has moved to. The movement from government is welcome. It showed that the arguments that the government whipped their MPs to support could be further improved, an argument that was made by Conservative backbenchers as well as Labour in relation to this. I believe there's further concessions that could just help undo the final concerns in relation to this, because I do want to see farmers paid, I do want to see the Ag Bill put into law, and I expect that many of these issues will return to us when the Trade Bill comes back to this House. Thank you.